Okay, so the development of the rights of Englishmen, that's our end goal. Okay? English Bill of Rights, rights of Englishmen, same thing. Okay, so we start off with James I. As you can see, big thing I want you to really get from them. There's other facts in the notes about him, but just remember, James I, Catholic, he kind of gets us going. I like to use James I in this timeline because it gives us a feel for where we're at. We know Elizabeth, the colony of Virginia, is named after her. We know Jamestown, the settlement, is named after James I. So kind of in our brain, figure out what year we're talking about, okay? Now, Charles I becomes king. Charles I is an absolute ruler type, kind of like what we talked about yesterday with absolutism, okay? But he's going to fight with Parliament over power. Parliament led by a man named Oliver Cromwell, OC. And they're going to fight, and one of the key things you want to get here is that his followers are called the Cavaliers. His followers are called the Roundheads, which is why I always put a little smiley face in there. And if you look at the pictures or any pictures of those Puritan Parliament people, Parliaments, Puritans, if you look at them, they have the kind of way their hair is cut. It's because their heads are kind of rounded, which is why they're called Roundheads. Anyways, this is the English Civil War. Charles I is going to lose. Not only is he going to lose the war, he's going to lose his head. Okay? Cromwell has him beheaded. Going through Cromwell's period, he's known as the Lord Protector. He's not nobility, so he's not the king. But he's going to kind of be in charge. But he's such a tyrant that after he dies, his son takes over for a little period of time, but that's it. Parliament requests Charles I's son to become the king again. He's like, look, dude, we want to go back to being a king, which is why we call this the Restoration period. Okay? Because we're restoring the parliament, restoring the monarchy. Got me? It's making sense. Okay. Restoration, Charles II. Everybody liked him. He kind of let Parliament make a lot of the decisions, so it kind of kept his hands clean of this, but they liked him. They called him the Merry Monarch. When he dies, he doesn't have any children. So he has no heir. No legitimate children. He has no heir. So his brother, James II, takes over. James II, who's trying to prove, again, these guys are all Catholic. Charles I is the son of James I. Charles II is the son of Charles I. James II is son of Charles I. Okay? So James II is like, look, I'm not really that Catholic. I'm willing to even allow my daughter to marry a Protestant. William of Orange is what we're going to call him, and we're not going to go there and think, it's not because he looks like Trump. They call him William of Orange because that's an area in the Netherlands. He was the Prince of Orange. Okay? So anyways, James's daughter, Mary, will get married to William, a Protestant. Now, this is an important point to bring up because of the political parties. This is the first known point where we see political parties. Tories in Parliament are those who support James II being the king. The Whigs are the ones who don't want James II to be king. So the Whigs go to William and say, hey, dude, get an army, come in here, wipe this dude out so you can be the king. We want a Protestant. We are a Protestant nation. Remember, with England, we've already established Henry VIII got rid of the Catholic Church. Queen Elizabeth I made the Anglican Church the Church of England. So England is a Protestant nation being ran by Catholics. See the problem? So, if you watch that video right there, you will see a detail of how the kind of how this goes. But basically, William is going to bring his army into England with the intention of taking over, chasing James out. James, scared because of what he saw happen to his dad in the last Civil War, right? His dad got his head chopped off. He just leaves. Eventually he ends up at the Palace of Versailles, so life isn't too tough on him. But he leaves. So we call this the Glorious Revolution because there was no war. Literally, armies marched, done. That's it. We don't want to fight. So no one dies. It's called the Glorious Revolution. Now, the last point to get with this is William and Mary. Before they are allowed to become the king and queen, they have to agree to some new rules. Basically, the English people say, hey, we need a constitution that sets rules for you kings and queens and such. We don't want this to keep happening. So this is the establishment of the English Bill of Rights, to basically give a governance to nobility and what they're allowed to do. And this is where you're going to see England change to what's known as a constitutional monarchy, or a monarchy that's controlled by a written document. Does that make sense?